Welcome back to the Hubscale Podcast, where we interview cybersecurity executives about themselves and about their journey in cybersecurity. This week we've got Jaci Tomek, the CRO of Andesite. Welcome, Jaci.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. So nice to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you as well. Let's get straight into it. Obviously, we've known each other, I think, for about 6 months now. But if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to Andesite.
Sure. So honestly, I really appreciate the opportunity. I didn't realize how long I've been doing it until folks started asking me how long I've been in cyber. So I was really fortunate to start quite a bit ago, really when we were moving from network operations into security operations at an MSSP in 1998 with a good friend of mine, Amit Uran. So
Wow.
it's been nearly 3 decades, but I really believe that we've evolved, and frankly, that's why I'm here at Andesite to continue to make a difference in an industry that really needs it.
Yeah, fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.
Tell us about Andesite and why you chose to be a part of the journey.
So, I've already admitted to being a little bit old, but I do feel as though we have an opportunity to really think about what impact we want to make. And when I learned about the thesis of Andesite, it really was about people, mission, and true outcomes for enterprise security teams. I loved the focus on the people. So I think you'll start to see as the market continues to evolve a lot more AI for SOC or security operations, automation, things like that. But it really was the group of people, Tom, that led me here to Andesite because of their leadership, because of the mission focus, and again, really the focus on the workforce, as we continue to evolve in our own careers.
Sure. You talked about security operations there and also about AI, and I guess Andesite is kind of combining the two. Could you tell us a little bit about what you guys call human AI SOC and what it does?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that differentiation. I think, you'll start to see an evolution, I think, of what the expectations are around timing, leveraging AI in an enterprise. And here at Andesite, what we've really focused on is that human component, really keeping a human in the loop, thinking about upskilling cyber talent, retaining tribal knowledge in the enterprise. And what we've actually built is a decision fabric in order to empower those analysts to do more productive work, feel fulfilled, truly get out of the menial, if you will, which sometimes it can be, just from a volume perspective, right? And do something meaningful with their human intellect around security operations and outcomes for the companies that they work for.
Wow. So, just to elaborate on that a little bit, because that's really interesting. How does the role of a traditional SOC analyst change for companies that adopt the Andesite platform?
Sure. No, it's a really great question. And again, I really appreciate you asking because I think that's the difference maker for us.
Yeah.
And I'll say this is an observation for me. I've done exactly one sock shift in 1999 and then decided that that's probably not the right thing for me. But what I've observed over the last, I'll say a little while is that what happened over the course of, say 2 decades is that we really built an infrastructure of many, many tools. And we've expected analysts and engineers to actually be expert in those tools, right? And then it's like, gosh, what do we do about the adversary? How do we understand how our enterprise works? And so our goal is to really upskill and continue to train folks because they have access to data across their enterprise without having to recopy it, put it into another location, another big data lake, if you will, right?
Sure.
And actually be able to leverage the investments that companies have made so that they have a sense of fulfillment, that they're not just saying good, not good, right? Good, escalate, close ticket, things like that, working at the top of the queue. One of my colleagues always says we try to get them out of the tyranny of the syntax and actually allow them to really think about what question do I need to think about? How do I really analyze this alert? And how do I impact sort of what's expected of me on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Yeah, it sounds great. And I guess it solves that problem that everybody is talking about of SOC analyst burnout.
It's true. And I think, human nature is what it is, right, in certain ways. And, I look at, my peer group and sort of, I'll say, my children now as they become young adults, they think differently, right? And
Yeah.
so you want to be fulfilled. There's just so much noise, so many alerts. And, I make silly analogies sometimes, but I look at even like the number of text messages sometimes I have. Is the most important one at the top? Have I scanned all of it? Right. And same thing with security operations and that plethora of alerts, right? There's just so much. You're always behind. And that can feel overwhelming, that you may never get to something that is interesting, that again fills that human spirit of,
Sure.
intellectual curiosity. Like, many people have become analysts because they have a real curiosity around what's happening. What are the bad guys doing? What can I do to solve it? I really want to understand how this infrastructure works. And I feel like that's the empowerment we're giving back to analysts as they continue to grow in their skill set.
Well, that's huge. And most analysts last a little bit longer than you, though. Just one shift.
Yeah, sometimes you just know. I think everyone was scared the night I was on shift.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant. One of the things that at first attracted me to Andesite, and this is going to sound silly, but was the name because it really stands out. It's
sure.
unique versus a lot of the other security operations startups which have either got AI in the name or something like that, you know? So could tell me about it. Where did it come from?
Sure. We have a really interesting origin story, Tom, and I really appreciate you kind of calling out that we're not some gobbledygook threat thingy, plus
Yeah.
AI, or co-pilot or something like that. But it really came from real conversation, thinking about what's missing in the space. And so I think, we have an unusual origin story, like I mentioned, because we've got a lot of senior leaders here from the mission space. My boss, Brian Carbaugh, was chief of staff for two CIA directors, and really was the co-founder of Andesite, thinking about what does the government do really well and where could we help them? And really technology adoption was one area, right? Keeping people and talent in seat. And so overlooking the mountains, Andesite Mountain, in fact, met with some really amazing folks that helped us get started from General Catalyst and some other places, including Red Cell Partners.
Sure.
And Andesite was born in 2023. I guess really late 2022, but incorporated, took on some money to really make sure that we could fund the mission that we all believed in.
That's really cool.
So I hope to
Um,
ski there one day, or at least
yeah.
après ski.
Where is it? Where is Andesite Mountain?
I, oh, you're asking me geography questions. I want to say Montana, but I might be wrong. We might have to cut this part out.
Yeah,
I'll
let's cut
check.
it. We'll cut this
Yeah,
part out. Yeah.
we'll fact check.
No problem. So one of the key questions I think about sort of the security operations AI space is that it's attracting a lot of interest from and attention from CISOs, from everybody really,
Sure.
VCs. Differentiation is going to be crucial. How do or how are Andesite approaching that at the moment?
Sure. I think if I can be bold, and these are, I'll put the disclaimer, these are Jackie statements, right? Not necessarily representative of Andesite Corporation, Inc. But I do think that we've federated sort of how we think about AI in security operations. So there
Right.
are teams thinking about truly just automating things. And I'm like, well, that definitely has a place. Like I think about even myself, like I want three different routes to get somewhere and I listen to my GPS even though I know where I'm going. Um, and then there are some teams that think that they can actually replace humans, right? And that's not our thesis at all. Really think it is about that intellectual curiosity and leveraging the know-how that only humans can reason, and actually leveraging that capability instead of sort of that menial, I'll call it low critical thinking work that machines can actually do, right? Like this should be blocked, it's known bad, as an example. I also think that Andesite has a different approach because we're leaving data where it is through a process of like a bidirectional API type of call, and we're not just restricted to that security data. So I think opening the aperture beyond sort of what certain data lakes are doing today, or SIMs or SIEMs, however you want to say it, have done in the past, it absolutely had its place. But I think we need a more flexible architecture and the need for us to really think about that tribal knowledge and to continue to upskill the teams.
Awesome. It looks like you guys are having a lot of fun. I was looking on the LinkedIn page at the Andesite Hackathon, which looks
Yes.
like it was a really successful day in December. What was that like? What was it for?
Sure. You know what I call it rapid prototyping, but what I really loved is that our engineering and product management teams came together to think about some critical key areas that we should develop in. Built
Sure.
rapid prototypes in the period of just 48 hours,
Wow.
presented to the team. We did have awards, of course, and a couple
Yeah.
of drinks. But it was really fascinating, like without constraints, to really work on a small component of what we need to do broadly as a platform as
Sure.
we again continue to work with our CISO and SOC director and analyst teams. And it was really fascinating to kind of catapult these ideas into production. So keep watching. I think you'll see a lot more from us over the next couple of months.
Amazing. One of the other things I think is really cool about Andesite and just a group of people there is it's not just Brian, is it? There's a group of former CIA officers that were involved in starting Andesite. What's it like to work with them and does it feel different to other startups that you've been involved with?
Yes, at the risk of being too familiar, and my children have assured me that I'm not funny, but I joke around and I'm looking for pinholes and things like that. But there's just this real sense of leadership. So Billy McMillan, my colleague, who's our chief product officer,
Sure.
retired out of the CIA as the CISO and had really large teams and mission critical teams during his tenure there, including insider threat and additional offensive operations. Also, Alex Thaman, who had been doing AI and machine learning before it was sort of a thing, right? At big companies like Microsoft and then Scale AI. And then, I often feel like I'm not the one that's supposed to be on the website, but, just a different level of enterprise experience from startups and go to market. And then, my colleague Greg Rattray, too, who coined APT, which is kind of cool.
No way.
Dr. Greg,
I
I
didn't
like
know
to
that.
call him. Yeah, he's got a wiki page. But for me, it really does up level. Like I'm always learning, and I know areas for me to improve, Tom, precise communication, for example. Like I know what I'm talking about, but also saying, you know what, actually, this is super important, something that we haven't thought of, or really understanding the parallels of mission critical work as it comes into a startup environment. So the leadership is just every day I'm learning and striving to be that 1% or 2% better.
Yeah.
Why stop at one? And, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to actually engage with, high performers that have actually made a difference in our day-to-day lives.
Do you have to change the way that you communicate with them because they come from that sort of CIA background and rather than
Um,
like communicating with me, for example?
It's funny. I think I'm adapting, but I think, that's the constant opportunity to work with people that are different from you or with different experience. I do believe I'm getting better because I'm in an education mode sometimes. Things
Sure.
that I take for granted, like working with a company like yours, right? Like I know the value and I have to be able to concisely articulate it to someone else who may have not had that experience before. So I'm a work in progress and trying to get better. My slides are still pretty ugly, but the content's getting much better.
Sure. And then moving on to Brian himself. So, you know,
Sure.
we sometimes categorize startups as have they got like a technical founder or have they got a go-to-market founder? And this
Sure.
is something completely different. So, versus the startups or the businesses that you've been a part of previously, what's it like to work for somebody and work in an organization led by a person like that?
It is really positively different in that when we talk about leadership, it encompasses a whole bunch of things that we take for granted, right? We're not just looking for, well, I've done two exits already. This will be my third. This is really focused on the mission. It is about high performance. It is about consistency. It is about trust. And I feel like you kind of know that as someone, working in a corporate environment, but you really feel it on a day-to-day basis. I feel safe. I feel cared for. We work hard. But we also, I think, expect a lot from one another, and we would never let one another down. And I think, not that it's different, but it's very pervasive and it's very, very consistent here. So it's made me just better.
Well, that's really interesting. Another thing that I noticed recently was that Andesite have released an AI SOC buyer's guide for
Mhm.
2026, which seems like an interesting step. Could you tell me about that?
Sure. We kind of touched on it briefly, Tom, but I think there's a lot of different ways to look at AI in general, as a how and not a what, but also like, what are your goals in using AI in your enterprise? I think we're really trying to shepherd that security operations team towards the right outcomes or success goals that they have broadly for their corporation or enterprise,
Yeah.
and really create that opportunity to really select the right partner. And I very specifically use that word because technically, sure, we're a vendor, but we're hyper focused on the success that you've outlined for yourself, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, right? The real opportunity to think about the market in different ways, right? Are you looking to automate a component? Are you looking to increase a certain efficiency in a certain area? Are you looking to do tool consolidation or maybe even approach things completely differently? We're starting to see companies look at, big data lakes and leveraging non-traditional security tools as part of their security operations. So we really wanted to empower our customers with different ways of thinking and different selection criteria as they look at this market, because it is pretty federated, like I mentioned. And I think it's quite crowded now. I do think over the next, I'll just call it, I don't know, 9 to 12 months, or maybe a little bit longer, we'll see some consolidation and maybe, sort of an emergent competitive winner. Hopefully it's Andesite, because we'll, be showing a strong value to our customers in the way that we do partner and kind of work closely with them towards their longer term goals.
Sure. That's an interesting point about AI SOC actually, because a lot when I'm talking to people who are interested in the sector or the space
Mhm.
within cybersecurity, a lot of people ask me about, is it a platform? Is it a tool? Is it a service? How do you
Sure.
approach kind of explaining what it is and what it does?
Yeah, so I often say what we do and what you do with us are different discussions, right? So we are a decision fabric platform that connects to what we term data islands, right? We're kind of agnostic in that arena. Again, leaving that data where it is, where we've created that idea of a thought for prioritization for our analysts, right? So they can actually work on the things that are most meaningful at the top of the queue instead of just starting at the top.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I say that, though, it is about decision support, right? It is about that true effectiveness and efficiency across the enterprise. And yet you're not having to learn just a whole new set of syntax. It is human natural language types of questions, and a real ability for us to say, gosh, you did this. What about this? A recommended next step would be the following. So you're actually learning beyond what you would, normally do in your day-to-day work queue.
Sure. Interesting. 2026 seems like a big year for Andesite. What does it have in store for you and the team?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's hard to believe that it's 2026. We'll start with that. By the end of March, we will have been in market for a year. We've
Wow.
been really fortunate to raise a significant seed round with our partners, General Catalyst, InQtel, and Red Cell Partners, where our co-founder, Grant Verstandig, has really created sort of a studio incubation space. We've signed on some national security partners, also some large, I would say, technology giants.
Yeah.
We're starting to increase our pervasiveness, if you will, across highly regulated industries, including financial services, where we have a very amazing design partner that has really helped shape our solution and our product. We're looking at expansion into additional markets, such as energy, manufacturing, healthcare, of course, and then, of
Wow.
course, international expansion. We've got some very strategic partners already in the works in Asia, Japan, so looking at UK and some other places.
But
So
coming back
growth.
to, yeah, growth in a word, growth.
Yes.
Coming back to the obviously the founding team being,
Mhm.
they're not from sort of enterprise or the business world, they're from the CIA world. How are they approaching that word, growth? Are they looking at it slightly differently from maybe how you've seen other founders look at it before?
It's really very unique. So I appreciate sort of the lens of the question. I think it's always about sort of, customer satisfaction. So for that, I'm super grateful. That's our number one kind
Yeah.
of vector, because that leads to revenue, right? That leads to no churn, that leads to expansion. And that, I think I'm going to steal from John Chambers a million years ago at Cisco, but we'll have those rabid fans, folks that are really helping us shape our next vision, our next solution set, and really help us expand across the enterprise. So, yeah, I think it's really about the partnership, and that'll lead to all the other things that the business gets measured on.
Amazing. One question that I have for you as you come up to 12 months of selling the product so far, if you could go back to the beginning, right at the beginning of the journey, is there any advice that you'd give yourself or the team?
Yeah, honestly, I think I would have asked more questions about where does AI fit? And I think I maybe would have recommended some things just based on what we were building and seeing. I think I could have done a better two-way communication and report back, hey, Tom, we talked 6 months ago. This is what I've learned. So we're still learning. I think the market is no longer, forgive me for this word, I just haven't had enough coffee, but they're no longer afraid of AI. They're really thinking about how do I use AI?
Yeah.
Right? What does that mean to me, especially in security operations?
So have you seen that evolve over the last 9 months of selling an AI like product or tool?
I really have. I think it is about efficiency, right? It's kind of like you need to upskill yourself. Like even I'm trying to work beyond Chat GPT. Like everyone's talking about Claude Code. I'm like, okay, I need to learn some more. But really understanding like what would be the biggest difference AI could make in my enterprise, right? Like we've got one particular partner that we're working with in the high tech space, and we are their AI for business efficiency play as they start looking about how they're going to build their global enterprise. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think too that the market got super crowded and everyone kind of jumped on the AI bandwagon, but it wasn't really different yet. And I'm not going to pick on any names because I would never do that. But, adding a co-pilot can be helpful, right? But it's like I want to be able to do something novel or something better, right? Not just something necessarily faster, the same thing faster, I would say.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because I certainly think we've seen that yeah, the market has woken up to AI and is no longer
Mhm.
scared of it. Do you approach going to market with an AI product different to how you've maybe gone to market with more of a legacy product or something like that? 'Cause I think that's a really interesting point, given that the whole world now is thinking about AI and maybe saying that they use it or sell it. So yeah,
It's interesting. I would say yes, but it's really about understanding again, where does this fit in your architecture, right? What is it that you're hoping to do? Whether it's AI, a new solution, less solutions, more people, less people, all of those things. So the motion is still the same. I think if anything, we're talking less feature function and really, really focusing with the customer, like what does success look like? How are you intending to leverage this capability, right? Machine learning, all of those things to a better outcome. What does that look like? How can we help? Right? What would show a material impact? I think folks are less worried about jobs being taken, although in the AI stock space, that is still some folks, value that they're trying to put into the market, and that is just not what we believe. We believe the human belongs in the loop.
absolutely. That's a really good point actually. You know, when you're speaking to analysts
Mhm.
about your platform, how do they approach it? Are they fearful of it? Are they thinking this is going to save me time? How do they see him when you first mention it?
It's a great question. And what honestly I think sets Andesite apart is that we actually have threat hunters here that are helping build the product they wish they always had, right? To do their
Yeah.
job better and more efficient. So that's sort of the lead in. Like, what if I could help you do something that you love a little bit better, a little bit faster? So you have time to work on sort of the big juicy stuff, right? Like ultimately that's what we want to do is solve problems.
Yeah, that's great. That was really interesting, and I can see that it's going to be a massive 2026 for Andesite. So, one final question for you, Jackie.
Sure.
We ask this on every podcast. If you could go back to the beginning of your career your cybersecurity career, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Honestly, I'm trying to live by it, but never stop learning. Because I'm in sort of the growth and sales, title, if you will, of the market. Um, I realized there was still a place of partnership where we can really be that trusted advisor still. So always provide that value to your customer. At the end of the day, people do business with people, right? And if you really understand your customer and you have that trusted relationship, you'll ensure that your product does what they need.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's
Really
been
appreciate the
great.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's
It's nice
been
to see
great.
you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, thanks so much, Jackie.
Alrighty. Have a great one. I'll see you soon.